In 1978, a nuclear physicist created a digital reverb that went on to become one of the most popular choices for producers and engineers. The reverb in question is the legendary Lexicon 224, and you can still find them in a lot of professional studios these days. Now, back in the 70s and early 80s, you could buy one for your studio for a mere $75,000 to $8,000, depending on the feature set. You've heard this reverb on countless recordings, and it's one of the most unique reverb units of all time. However, to some folks like me and maybe guitar players like you, when you try to wrap your head around it, it can be a little confusing. So we're going to try to alleviate some of that confusion today in this video. Companies like Universal Audio have been modeling the Lexicon 224 to use as a plugin for many years, but they've gotten into the pedal game and they've taken some of those algorithms and put them into pedals for far less money than the old rack unit that you see in studios these days. This is the Evermore, and the Evermore faithfully recreates a few of those algorithms from that old Lexicon 224 unit and put it into a relatively inexpensive reverb pedal. This style of reverb really functions differently than a spring or a plate. It's a digital reverb with some controls that might not be as intuitive to us guitar players. So we're going to use the Evermore as our donor demo pedal here, and I'll walk you through some of those features and how you get some really unique sounds, and we'll talk about what makes that circuit and that style of reverb so special. So let's jump in and check it out. So the signal path I'm working with is just this Sire S7 hum single style guitar going directly into a Universal Audio Lion pedal. Now the Lion is our amp modeler for this video, and it faithfully recreates the sound of, the 68 Marshall Super Lead. Has some other bells and whistles under the hood because that was a highly modified amp, so some of those modifications are in this pedal, but we're going to use it relatively clean. Let's turn that off and just hear what it sounds like. No reverb, right? Marshalls generally don't have reverb. That one doesn't. So we want to add some reverb to it. It's a good candidate to use for this video. So out of the Lion into the Evermore. That's what's happening here. I found that these reverb pedals and delays with an amp modeler sound better after. Compressors, overdrive pedals maybe go on the input side, try some reverbs and delays on the output side. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. So once we got Evermore dialed in, we're going to get a little bit of small room reverb. The mix control is your standard mix control. It's ratio, basically. It's your dry guitar signal to the wet guitar signal or the reverberated sound and how much of that you're hearing. Straight up and down would be a 50-50 blend and anywhere in between. Now, the mod control, we'll get into that later, but it's going to allow us to put modulation or some chorusing, if you will, on the reverb trails. In the middle of the pedal, there's a switch that you can select between 3 different reverb algorithms. These were 3 of the more popular ones from the original Lexicon 224, a small room sound, or a room sound, a small hall, and a large hall. And you can select those with that toggle switch. Now, where it gets really interesting is in the decay section, because you see bass, middle, and treble. And immediately you'll think, well, is this an EQ for the reverb? And well, reverb pedals sometimes have EQ controls to brighten or darken the trail, but this is where it gets really interesting with this design, is they assigned frequencies in bands, if you will, to the reverb, and you can decay or you can lengthen or shorten the decay of those reverb frequencies. It's really interesting. So the brighter trails can last longer than the darker trails, or vice versa. And that was really giving engineers and producers and musicians sounds that they weren't able to get from reverb units prior, at least to my knowledge. But you can see here, they're all kind of almost around 9 o'clock. And we want to get a small room sound. So imagine your guitar amp is in a little bathroom with tile. So let's crank it up and hear what we get. And you can hear the decays die. So if we want the decays to be longer, we would want to turn these knobs up. We can increase our mix so we can really hear it for the video. Check it out. Now, that's probably a little too much for us, especially if we're playing short, choppy phrases like that. But maybe we want to play something that's like... So you hear those hang around a little bit longer. If we push those even more, it'll last even longer, and we can pull the mix back so it doesn't overwhelm us. Now, the beautiful thing about this kind of reverb that I don't notice in as many others in a small pedal, relatively inexpensive format like this, is listen to how the guitar tone is sitting on top of the reverb. That's the musicality in this effect that a lot of people like. I'm getting like David Gilmour vibes, right? Because those Pink Floyd records and stuff like that, like it always seemed like that effect was just hovering around, and that's kind of what this thing really excels at. So it's creating this really cool bed of sound underneath me. And you can hear even with the room sound, I'm getting long decay times. I can go as crazy as I want to. But what's cool is maybe I don't want the low end, listen to this, to ring out so much. Hear that? That's the low end reverb. So I'm going to turn that down, and I'm going to bring in these other frequencies and let these sing a little bit longer. You can hear the brightness of the reverb trailing off longer. And that's what engineers and producers really liked, to that they wanted to get that detail. So now it sounds like a little bit bigger room. Now that might not work for everybody, but that's what this pedal is supposed to do. It's supposed to allow you to tailor those trails in a way that was very much reminiscent of the original unit. So we want to hear some other sounds from this pedal. Let's go do that, and I want to talk to you about some of the features on the top too. So I changed the switch to the middle position here for the small hall, and it's really not that small. That's what's interesting about this pedal and this original unit, is that it gave you really long decay times. And you can see that I have the treble and the mid frequencies lasting longer than the bass. So what will happen is they'll decay at a longer rate than the bass frequencies. That'll die sooner. Now, let's say I want to get wacky and I want to start to bring in some chorusing to the trail. So check this out. I want to add a lot more, and this is another place that this kind of pedal excels at. So if you like holding out some big chords and getting some lush sounds, check this out. If you listen in the background, there's going to be some chorusing happening on those trails. I mean, you take that pedal off, and you're back into dry land. Now we're into ultra wet sounds. And that's, again, some of the things that you can't maybe do with your standard reverb pedal that's under $150. So they put a lot of effort into trying to give you a lot of those 224 sounds that if you're a follower of that kind of Lexicon sound, they're in there for sure. So if we were to move on to the large hall, you guessed it, it's just going to get longer and crazier, and it might not be for you. So we could play around a little bit more and try to get some more desirable straight down the middle sound. And that's all in the mix control, but the beauty of it is listen to how it kind of gives you a little something extra afterwards. So a really fun reverb that has plenty of sounds in it, but there's a hidden trick on the top that I need to show you about. It's super, super important. There's a function on the top of this pedal that also recreates something really important, not only found in that unit, but in other delay, or reverb units, I should say, is called pre-delay. See, I wanted to say delay. And pre-delay, basically what that means is it's the time in which the reverb is started, the onset of the reverb. So you'll have some dry guitar first, then the reverb starts. So it also gives you kind of like a slapback effect sometimes, which is pretty cool, combined with all of the funky trails and modulation we have going on here. I actually prefer that. It kind of grooves with me a little bit more. Otherwise, the reverb is immediately, as soon as there's signal into the box. There's also a function on here for true bypass or buffered bypass. We are in buffered bypass, and what that means is when I turn the pedal off, the reverb trail will continue on even though the pedal is off. So there's a buffer in there basically pushing that signal through, and when the pedal's off, it's also keeping your tone at a level that's consistent throughout your pedal board. If we wanted to be true bypass, which means it takes the circuit out of your chain completely, and we played some reverb, as soon as we stop the pedal, reverb is done. Some folks might want that, some folks might not. If you have a bunch of buffers already in your pedal board, you might be able to turn the buffer off, and if you never turn this off, then you're not going to worry about it killing the reverb trail either. So that's another important feature for that. So I turned up the gain a bit on the Lion pedal, and the Evermore is fairly similar to our last clip. I wanted to hear how it would sound with a little bit more overdrive, but not crazy distortion. And it's back there just behind my guitar playing. The pre-delay's on, giving me a little, almost like a slap echo. Nice and long, not too long. But it's not happening as soon as I play. Now, if I want to get crazier, I can sure do that. A little overdrive, maybe some long lines and some mod. I know a lot of you that watch my channel a lot were probably saying, I would never use that sound, but let's open our minds a little bit and hear what we can get. So if I'm playing fast lines, I don't need really long decay times. To me, the shorter reverbs work better with funkier, faster playing, longer ballady stuff, longer delay times. And like I've said many times, this won't work for everybody or for every style of player. So think about the musical situation you're in. Maybe you're playing some of this stuff. Really pretty for that sort of open string. Maybe you're a guitar player playing in a situation where you're just creating some pads. It's a tool, and it's a tool that's been used on so many records that we probably couldn't calculate all of them, believe it or not. And, you know, reverb is one of those things. I think this unit in particular, the reason I think producers, engineers, players liked it is because they could get their initial sound out with the reverb just underneath, creating this bed of tones. If you listen to Peter Gabriel or U2, you're going to hear this so often and you might not even realize you're hearing it. But that's the sound of the Lexicon 224, sort of filtered down to its greatest hits in the Universal Audio Evermore pedal. So that's the Evermore from Universal Audio. This pedal really pays homage to the classic Lexicon 224 type of sound. It does it in a very, very convincing way. Although it doesn't have all of the algorithms of that original unit, it's got the greatest hits. And if you're looking for those lush, big reverbs from the 80s and you want to create these atmospheric beds of tones, for a pretty low price, the Evermore will get you there. Universal Audio actually made a much more involved reverb pedal in the Golden Reverberator, and the sounds for the 224 are also in this, but they pulled them from this and put it in a smaller box that's even more affordable. But if you want to go to the next level with springs and plates, check out the Golden Reverberator as well. I'll have links to this, the Evermore, and all of the other stuff that we used in this video. I'm really trying to make every video on this channel as educational as possible. Whether it's teaching you how to play a scale or an arpeggio or how to use a reverb pedal, I want you to walk away with some knowledge that you didn't have. Maybe be entertained a little bit, I don't know, I do my best. But let me know in the comments what you're using for reverb pedals, what you'd like to see me educate you more on, whether it's playing or gear. I really, really enjoy doing it because I like to hear when someone says, I finally understand what this pedal is supposed to do. Thank you. That really, really makes my day. So leave your comments below. Don't forget you can check the links for the gear that we used. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and maybe consider subscribing. Until next time, stay safe and keep playing. I'll see you.